Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. All right, before we jump in, I've just got to give a shout out because the 2025 Dogged Planner is out. It has been updated because we listen to the feedback, and so it has a few new bells and whistles. I really like the judging the judges section where we can sort of keep track of the judges that are good for us and maybe not so good for us and why. So that's cool. And that change, for instance, as well as all the others, like roll over into the workbook. So whether you want the calendar or don't want the calendar, there's a Dogged product for you. All right. So now that we're done with my shameless but very prideful, I'm going to say, because I'm proud of that system, plug, we will move on to the topic at hand. So this week it comes from a submission. So again, thank you for submitting ideas and questions and just things that you want to talk to me about. The link is always in the show notes for you to do that. And you can find me on social media and a whole bunch of other ways and reach out with ideas. Regardless, this idea is about juggling multiple dogs. Now, most of us are dog crazy enough, or we should say sport crazy enough, that we have multiple dogs, and maybe they're going in different directions. They're probably different ages. They're probably at different points in their performance journeys. Most likely, the young dog versus the older dog with the comfy slipper, whatever we want to call that dog, the dog that basically has us so in our comfort zone, it just feels like home. And then maybe the dog that is young and wild and a genius one day and a moron the next day, because that's what young dogs do and that's how they learn and that's the stage. And what happens when we have, dogs at multiple ages, and, maybe you also have a retired dog who needs a little more like rehab or conditioning support, or maybe you have a baby puppy who isn't ready to trial yet, but you need to be putting on the foundation and so on and so forth, right? So when we have multiple dogs, we have to think about them as individuals, yet it's really hard when we're competing with multiple dogs who are at different spots in our journeys, and because they require a different mindset from us, or they require a different approach. And so sometimes bouncing, back and forth between one dog and the other is a challenge in and of itself. And of course, that challenge is made even greater when you have ring conflicts and you're hurrying from dog to dog and you don't really have time to reset or time to do like a mini mindset reset kind of a thing in between dogs, because sometimes the schedule doesn't allow, right? You have to be realistic in your approach. So for the sake of this conversation today, we're going to assume that you've got two dogs, okay, which again, probably have more or whatever, or different stages, but we're going to assume for this conversation, you have two dogs. One is your comfy slipper. You just love trialing. It's very familiar. You probably are pretty consistent, pretty confident when you run that dog. And then the other is a younger dog who you haven't gotten that consistency yet. Maybe every day is a different day. Maybe every run's a different run, kind of a thing. And this carries over regardless of your sport, of course, right? Because there are different stages and you're going to have to bounce back and forth. So let's go from that assumption. You're going to customize it for your own needs as we go. Okay. So the first thing to recognize that what makes your comfy slipper their comfy slipper is time, experience, and you've just gotten to a place where every day you're in your comfort zone. And that's why it's your comfy slipper, right? That's why it's your cozy, whatever, your bestie, because it's predictable. You're in your comfort zone. You're not pushing you're not trying new things probably, or if you are, you're trying them with great confidence because you know each other so well. You have like just such a great relationship. Everything feels really effortless. Your rituals, for instance, are just such habit. They just like happen. You don't even hardly think about it anymore. You know how to manage them and get them from the crate to the gate very easily, very smoothly, very mindful, very demure, right? Everything is easy. It just feels easy. And so I want you to recognize, though, that that is your comfort zone. And it's not that you don't want to grow. It's just that you've gotten to a place with this dog, with this relationship, with your experience, etc., that it is easy, that it is comfortable, okay? And it's lovely there. And everybody loves their comfort zone, right? Because we feel really successful in our comfort zone because we're good at those things. They're comfortable, okay? So your young dog is always in your growth zone because your young dog is pushing you. Now, maybe this is your, who knows, 17th dog, okay? And so for you, the novice ring isn't new. For you, these training philosophies or these training approaches might not be that new, or maybe you're incorporating some new things, okay? But the fact that you are seasoned helps, but it's not enough to keep you in your comfort zone because your dog is in their growth zone. And so therefore you're back in your growth zone. So in a way, part of what makes us so uncomfortable is we feel like, God, we're so smart in one ring with one dog. And then we pick up the other leash and we're like, how am I acting like I've never even been around a novice ring before, right? Because they just suddenly we are flipped back into our growth zone when just literally 5 minutes ago we were in our comfort zone. So with that, it sort of messes with us, right? Because we're bouncing back and forth, not necessarily, I'm going to say by choice. Of course, we choose to run our dogs, but I just mean like it's kind of feels like it's happening to us. We're like, it's all Skittles and rainbows in one ring, and then we go to the other ring and we're like, oh my God, this is like a feral hot mess, okay? Or at least it feels like that internally sometimes. So I want you to recognize that one of the things that is happening is that you are bouncing or moving from your growth zone to your comfort zone, to your growth zone, to your comfort zone, and you're moving back and forth. And so part of you has to acknowledge that so that you can kind of rationalize, if you will, the emotions that you are feeling. Because we go from feeling very secure to very insecure, very confident to very not confident, right? Or very worried. We might have totally different nerves, right? And the fact is, it's like one is your growth zone, one is your comfort zone, and that moving almost abruptly between those two, not feeling like you have a lot of control over it, can be really unsettling and almost like triggering from a nerve standpoint, because just 2 seconds ago you were confident and now suddenly you're worried, or you can feel that you're fiddling with the leash as you walk to the line, or you can feel you're getting angsty and nervous and forgetting the course and doing all that stuff that you thought was behind you. And the reason it's coming back is because that feeling of being in the growth zone is now coming back to you. And it just feels uncomfortable. And maybe enough time has gone by that you forgot what that feels like, right? I know personally, I went 7 years between puppies. That's a long time. I forgot a lot of things, okay? I forgot a lot about all of this uncomfortable nature, right? I forgot that it's bliss 1 minute when my puppy's a freaking genius, and then the next minute I'm like, oh my God, is she ever going to be able to find the door? You know what I mean? Like it just is kind of a wild ride. And I forgot so much of what that emotional feeling is like, and that feeling of being uncomfortable and that feeling of unknown. So the first thing to realize is like, oh, that's what's happening. And I always like to start with picking things apart, because I feel like in doing so, when we parse things out, when we pick things apart, when we stare at them, we understand them more logically at a moment when we're not being emotional. right? Like right now, as you're listening to this, you're probably driving to a trial and you're not currently having an emotional moment with your dog, hopefully, right? And so this is the right time to think of these things through logically so that we can start to get our handle on it. Because when we're in the throes of it, when we're in the throes of a trial, or we're feeling emotional, or we walk out of the ring and our young dog just super embarrassed us, and we want to crawl in a hole or whatever, or we're making 10 excuses on the way back to the crate, like, oh, he's young, this is only our second trial, or, whatever, or that's what open purgatory's for, or whatever your excuses that you feel you need to make, that's the emotional time. And that's not the time to think as clearly, because we're just naturally not. So in this time right now where you are logical and you have time to think it through, this is the time to break it down. So that's what we're doing. We're breaking it down. So when you really understand that this is what you're doing, the other thing I want you to, meaning between your comfort zone and your growth zone, between being comfortable and being really uncomfortable again. The other thing I want you to remember is, remember I talked about a long time ago that a third thing that I heard via a coach of an Olympian. And the coach was saying that a third of the time, when you're working toward a goal, the third of the time should be fun. A third of the time is meh. It just is. It's just training. It's just whatever. It doesn't feel great or bad or whatever. It just is. And the third of the time sucks. Third of the time is really uncomfortable or really miserable even. And problems arise when that balance goes out of whack. When you're spending 50, 70% in that misery zone, you're not really getting much joy out of it. Okay. So I'm reminding you of that because sometimes when we get young dogs and we have multiple dogs in the house, the third thing isn't isolated to a dog. Okay. And what I mean by that is like, dog comfy isn't a third because there's really no misery in that dog, right? It's all either meh or it's fabulous. Okay. That dog does not bring us misery. And that's why it's so fun. And yet the young dog is not a third either. Actually, that might have been 4/3. Anyway, you know what I mean? Because they're maybe 70% misery, or maybe they're 20% misery one day and 90% misery the next day. Okay. And so when you are thinking about this rule for yourself, or wondering or beating yourself up, or getting in that phase where you're like, oh my God, are we ever going to get out of it? This young dog is frustrating me to no end. Is it too late to return? Is the return policy still open? Like, what is happening? And you have those days, those really tough days. I want you to remember that third rule is overall. So the joy that you're not getting potentially from your younger dog, you are getting from your older dog. Okay. That challenge that you're not getting from your older dog, you are getting from your younger dog. So you need to make sure that somewhere you are finding that joy. You are having fun. You are remembering and reminding yourself that, like, oh yeah, in 6 years, because for whatever reason, it's always 6 years. In 6 years, this young dog is going to be amazeballs, just like my older dog is, right? This is all going to work out. I forgot it was this hard. I know that's my story right now, and this is just how it's going to go. Okay. So I want you to think about that as you are kind of in pursuit, as you are growing up this dog and working really hard and not maybe getting a lot of joy out of the younger one. Remember that you're balancing it out with your joy of the older one. Okay. And we're going to talk specifically about shifting our mindset back and forth right after this. Quick question. Do you ever wish you had more mindset help? Well, the Q membership was created just for that reason. Every month we pick a topic, and then we have 4 lessons, which are kind of like these podcasts, that we dive deeper into. And so if you are ready for more, you're ready for more mindset work, think about joining the Q membership. Annual members get a free coaching session, but you can also choose the monthly option as well. Go to theqcoach.com to learn more. Let's get back to the episode. All right, so as we get into mindset, we have to pause and talk about goals, Because the biggest thing when you are trialing with dogs that, again, comfort slipper situation versus young dog potentially embarrassing or at least learning and growth in that kind of that tough place, or just in a new place. It's just a young dog, right? Coming up. Maybe they're being amazing. They're sailing through novice. Everything's bliss. Okay. I want you to remember that you're going to need different process goals for these dogs. All right. And so no longer is it enough that you show up to the weekend with just one set of process goals or one mantra or, one, set of even outcome goals that you want to have, right? To be quite honest, with your comfortable dog, you probably have gotten kind of lax on the process goals because it's just the same, and it's just lovely that it's the same, and it's just enjoyable that it's the same, or at least you know what it is, and you're in a habit, you're in a groove, what's going to make that dog successful. Okay. But when it comes to your younger dog, maybe those process goals aren't dialed in, or more accurately, maybe they're changing weekend to weekend as your dog is progressing. So you have to, before you even get in the car to drive to the trial, you have to really think about, what are my different process goals for the weekend? What are my different process goals for my comfortable dog versus my young dog? All right. And, bonus points for like writing them down, even if it's just like a couple words, right? That just locks them into your brain, or write them on a, 3x5 card, have them on your crate. Have one 3x5 card on one dog's crate and the other 3x5 card on the other dog's crate, so that you glance down and you reconnect to those process goals, or maybe different mantras, or maybe different, themes for the weekend, right? Like sometimes I like to have a theme for the weekend that says like, well, what would be a successful weekend, right? What would make this upcoming weekend successful? And it gives me kind of an overall theme, and it doesn't need to be like, for instance, I like a young dog going to, an agility trial, the theme might be like, hey, I want them to have good experience this weekend, because I'm investing, right? In that young dog, we're always making an investment. We're investing in the future every time we touch the leash. It's always an investment. So if you don't cue today, I want to make sure that I'm having a good experience, giving my dog good miles, if you will, for the future. I'm always making an investment. So I can't fail because it's an investment, right? Different experiences, etc., right? So that might be my theme for the weekend. Make the investment. Everything's an investment. Okay. So it might help for you to have those 3x5 cards sitting there so that every time you go back to the crate, you at least reconnect. Bonus points if you are as anal as I am, and maybe they're two different colors even, right? The comfortable shoe is, a pink 3x5 card and the other one's a yellow one. I don't know what you've been able to find at the store. But point being is, what is going to help you transition from one dog to the other? Do you need to come up with a little crate to gate sort of habit, like a 3x5 card? Do you need to write one thing on your left hand and one thing on your right hand? What level of reminders, what level of little tips and tricks, or, physical things will help you transition your brain to okay, this isn't, the comfortable dog I'm running now. This is the young dog. Or, okay, the young dog gave me a little angst, a little grief today, but now I get to run my comfortable dog. Okay. So we still have goals with those comfortable dogs, right? Maybe you're still working on a mock or an och or a rock or whatever the och is of the day, that you still have those big goals. It's not like this dog's retired, but it just feels a little easier. But your goals, your process goals are different. Your mantras are different. And maybe you need different energy. Maybe you have one dog that needs to be up and the other dog that needs to be down. Maybe one dog needs a big walk in the morning. Maybe the other one needs to crate in the car to chill. You have to continue to treat them as individuals and not shoehorn them. Got to use my enunciation here. Shoehorn them into your routine. Okay. Because I think we tend to do that, right? We get a routine going. It worked for the first dog, or it worked 5 dogs ago, we got it down, and now everybody has to just, suck it up and deal with that, right? Instead of us really looking at the dogs as individual and setting them up for success. So I want to make sure that when you are transitioning your mindset, what you're really doing is putting a focus on, like, okay, this dog is an individual. What does this individual need from me? This dog needs these process goals, or this mantra, or this dog needs me to calm down. And I know that I'm not going to go, that even if I have a conflict and I'm rushing, the worst thing for this dog is if I rush to the crate and grab him out of the crate and start running for the practice jump. Okay. That maybe that's bad. So we have to really think ahead of time. Again, when we're not in the environment, when we have time to logically think it through, what is the best for the dog? Because if we start to do that, then what happens is our physical habits, the physical things that we do, start to support the mindset that we need for that dog, right? And it all gets connected in a really great way, in a really easy way. It makes it easier for us to execute on these habits that we want, right? Like, that's really what crate to gate rituals are, right? And, of course, my rituals start like at the beginning of the morning and, go throughout the day. But that's what those are about, right? Setting our dogs and setting ourselves up for success. So when you have 2 very different dogs, or dogs that are very different stages, you have to continue to think about them as individuals and figure out a way that is that helps you transform, or transition, I should say, from one dog to the next, right? And what does that dog need? And how can you show up for that next dog? And are there physical things in your environment, like leaving yourself a reminder, or, writing on something, or doing some habit, or, getting a different toy out that makes you think differently, or something like that? What can you do in your environment that helps you flip that switch to the other dog? Okay. So I'd be super curious how you guys come up with ideas for this. I know for me, one of the biggest thing is energy. I'm obsessed with the energies for our dogs, and being really aware of what different dogs need. For me, I find that the warm up for each dog, like as I get them out of their crate, sometimes I might go to the crate a little bit frenetic if I've had a conflict or something like that. Hopefully not, but it happens. And, then when I take the dog out, I literally kind of am like, oh yeah, it's you, right? Whether hello, you comfortable thing, you, or hello, you wild young dog, you, or whatever it is. But to connect to that dog as an individual kind of helps me reset to the process goals I've made. Because let's be honest, when it comes to younger dogs, we have to make appropriate process goals, right? Like, what is an appropriate goal for that dog to have this weekend? We might not even have very many outcome goals for that dog yet, because maybe they're just not there yet, right? We can't have those kinds of expectations yet. So instead, we're having like, progress goals with those dogs, right? Like investing in their future or something like that, or just working on the weaves, or just working on our healing patterns, or what have you, like whatever it is that you're leaning into. So right, I would start with making sure that you have very distinct process goals for each dog. Figure out what your transition plan is to move from dog to dog. And then come up with maybe an overall theme for yourself, in addition to like what the theme is for each dog for the weekend, right? And it might just be, gosh, for the comfortable dog, I just want to have fun and enjoy and just run like I know we can run, and just to be like running with my best friend. And with the young dog, you're like, it's all about good experiences and investment in the future. And if we can get our contacts, that's a bonus. Right? Those kinds of things. And then make a physical switch, like when you pick up the other leash, or when you go back to the crate, or when you potty the other dog, that make some physical habits of like, okay, now I'm running this dog. That means da 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 da. And when in doubt, simplify it. Don't add more to your plate. Take more off your plate and simplify it so that you can be successful, and you can get confidence from switching back and forth of your dogs, right? Because I do think it is It is a learned skill to be able to switch back and forth effortlessly and be able to connect to the dog that you're running. And really, at the end of the day, what that truly means is being present, right? You're leaving your dog that you just ran. You're done with that dog for now. And so you're like, that's over. Stop with that dog. And now I'm going to be fully present for the dog that I have. So that's kind of hard too, because so often we want to replay that last run in our heads, right? We want to figure something out. Maybe we made a mistake and we want to really think it through, or we want to watch the video, or we want to go deep, but we don't have that kind of time. So promise yourself you will review those details at the end of the day. Make sure you keep that promise to yourself and do review those details at the end of the day, and run the dog that's in front of you. And that means their current level of skill set. That means their current experience. That means their, current abilities. That means your current mental abilities, because maybe you're having a great day or a tough day, or, what have you. And be fully present. And as soon as you make that switch, and as soon as you prioritize that, it'll feel a lot easier. It'll be a lot clearer. And you won't put quite so much pressure on switching. Right? It won't feel so harsh because you are determined to be fully present with the dog at the end of your leash. Okay? So I hope that helps. I would love to know your tips. Always, send me feedback. Find me on the socials. Send me a note. I love the feedback. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic week with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.